welcome to another Anne Chat. In this chat, I am chatting to Michelle Reid. Michelle Reid is a Dublin-based playwright, facilitator, dramaturg and comedy improviser. She's originally from Norwich and she began her professional career as a very established comedian on the London comedy circuit in the late 1980s when there were not that many women doing such. So she has very interesting things to say about that experience, about why she loves theatre over doing solo stand-up, and she's great at creating a whole picture of what it was like on the London scene then, and about her work now and her whole philosophy of performance and indeed life. And this is a conversation after my own heart. One, because Michelle Reid is one of my oldest pals, and two, because I started out in London too, and so I loved reminiscing about what the performance scene was like then and how it differs to now. And I suppose there's an element of nostalgia there. And also, interestingly, Michelle describes exactly what a dramaturg does for those who are not familiar with dramaturgy. I first heard the word from Michelle. Enjoy this chat. I so enjoyed chatting with Michelle. Hello, Michelle Reid, very old friend of mine. I know that you trained as an actress in England and then you worked on the comedy circuit as a stand-up, were very successful, and then moved to Ireland in the early 90s, was working as a comic and then totally focused on theatre. And you still do the comedy improv, of course. But tell me, Michelle Reid, who is Michelle Reid?
She's a grumpy old curmudgeon today. No, I suppose I would self-identify as a playwright and theatre maker mainly, but I also teach, I facilitate, teach drama, teach playwriting and theatre. I work as a dramaturg as well.
For people who don't know what a dramaturg is, like I first heard the word from you. I didn't have a clue.
It's one of these. It's like a dragon.
Yeah, a dragon.
It's a fire-breathing dragon.
Oh, tell me more. Fascinating.
Yeah, since medieval times, people think that dragons or dramaturgs don't exist anymore, but we still, fly around terrifying villages.
Yeah.
No, what a dramaturg is basically a script editor, sort of in the theatre world, or. Although it's kind of more holistic, I suppose. A dramaturg is the person who asks you questions about your play and is your sort of sounding board. So when you're writing anything, you're going off on a journey into the imagination. Like it doesn't exist, you're making it. And you're not just writing a series of lines for a series of characters, you're trying to create a world. And that world has to sort of hold water and make sense. And it might be a heightened world, so it might be a bit bonkers and a bit crazy, but it'll still have rules in it, I suppose. So your dramaturg often is somebody who's sort of standing on the outside and just checking back in with you and saying, what are you trying to do? And also, because of live stuff, it's got to land in real time with an audience.
But because you're a writer yourself and you've so much experience also in the whole comedy thing, when you come along to work as a dramaturg with someone, are you not sometimes... you must start seeing the shadow of other things that the work could be. Yeah. And do you have to pull back a bit and go, I'm not going to say, but I'm seeing that there's a different beginning, middle and end here? Or...
Yeah, totally. I think you have to be really careful with that. Like, you're not a collaborator. And I think you have to be really careful to say that and to understand that. And because you're working with somebody and they've got this fantastic idea and they're working away on it and you're going, oh, now if it was me... I'd go off in this direction. And you kind of have to go, it's not me, I'm not writing this, you are. And what's your intention and what's your vision and what do you want to try and land with an audience? My job is to go, if you write that speech with all this exposition in it, if you go, this is my sister Mary, she's works in the bank, that's boring for an audience. That's my job. It's just to tell you, which, most playwrights know that.
But are there some dramaturgs who do come in and go, no, I see this shape? go this way?
I don't know. I guess the more famous the dramaturg, I mean, there are some really famous dramaturgs working in Germany. You know,
tell me not.
Because Germany is where they came from. I think the first dramaturg was like Brecht's dramaturg, and it was all, in his day, it was all very, we just give you a name, and it's a German name, because we're in Germany, you know, so it all makes sense. And they're all hanging out, and they're working kind of as an ensemble, but he's in charge, and, you know, so the dramaturg came, or was it before? Maybe it was even before Brecht, I can't remember now. But it was all kind of straightforward, and it was a way of working. And so they have that lineage in Germany. Yeah, you've got that line then when you've got people who have a name as a dramaturg, so they don't want their name on a show that's shit. So I don't know whether people then are going, I've got this wealth of knowledge that I'm bringing to bear on you. I mean, you wouldn't put a really experienced dramaturg, I think, with a very inexperienced writer, because the balance of power, this whole thing we're talking about in loads of different spheres, the balance of power. You've got to feel inequality. And even if I'm working with a dramaturg, like, because it's harder to dramaturg yourself, and I can do it, but it takes longer. Whereas if somebody comes in and gives me feedback on what I'm writing, it's brilliant. But if I'm a bit scared of them, or I think they're brilliant, I might just go with what they say, rather than thinking, that's not really what I want to do. There's a great choreographer called Liz Lerman, and she's a wonderful woman. She's still alive. She's amazing, and she has she wrote a book called Critical. I can't remember the
Dancing about the place.
Critical dancing around. It was a critical process that she came up with, and it's basically how to give feedback. And I use it with students. I use it with everybody. It's brilliant, because she said when she was a young dance artist making choreography, this brilliant dance dramaturg came in and gave her all this advice. You should do this and you should do this. It's very concrete kind of advice, and she was blown away. And she did those things, put them into her dance, and then the critics wrote about those things, and she realised those weren't her things. And even though it got amazing reviews, she realised, well, they were reviewing this other person's work. And she kind of went, I need to make my own mistakes and do my own stuff and figure it out for myself. So I think it's that sort of equality, that power dynamic between somebody. If somebody's giving you advice in anything, I think you need to feel comfortable being able to say, that's brilliant, or no, I don't want that advice.
Just going back to the comedy thing, it's interesting you talk, that's the norm in theatre, that you would seek out these pointers and these other mentors and professionals to work with. But comics traditionally don't do that.
No.
And I think it would benefit so much. Like, and for the last few years, I've been working with my partner Paul, and it's just amazing to have that other sounding board. And you know that American female comedian who presented, was it the
Sorry, we're terrible. We can't remember anything.
I can't remember anything.
It's too many women forgetting everything.
Ricky, you know the one that Ricky Gervais famously did, that awards ceremony.
Oh yeah,
The
Globes.
the Golden Globes.
The Golden Globes. She presented the Golden Globes, and now she's a very successful lady comic. Lady, my mum used to say lady doctor, and she's a lady doctor. She's a very successful lady comic. But I was reading about her process for that. She was quite open about the way she approached it. She actually has a staff of 10 writers, and they knuckled down for that monologue and went over and over it. And then she said she performed that monologue about 97 times in small clubs and worked it through. And so she was saying, even though like she would have done pointers for the kind of gags she wanted, they were gags that were written by other people. But she said an interesting thing. She said, you know, even though, they wrote it, I see myself kind of as a curator. Which is so different to the comics we would have known in England.
And I saw that interview with her, and I was thinking, well, fair play, because you are doing the Golden Globes, or you know, and you need to be on it. I mean, I remember first rehearsing to do stand-up. I got a gig. Oh, this is like way back, because I went to college, Middlesex Poly in London, and
which was brilliant.
Which was brilliant, because one of my tutors ran a comedy club in Crouch End.
The King's Head.
The King's Head in Crouch End, which you probably played, which was a fantastic place to play. And this was in the 80s when people had started to realise that there was probably a future or a career in comedy. You could make a bit of money doing it, but there were still loads of smaller clubs. And you could get open spots quite easily. And Hugh Thomas, who's an amazing guy, he ran the club and he ran a module for stand-up comedy. So a whole bunch of us started doing open spots. And about two or three of us, when we were in college.
Yeah.
And about 2 or 3 of us kind of stuck with it. And then there was a student drama festival, and he said, look, do you want to do some of your stand-up? I'd done about 2 open spots, and they'd gone quite well. And I remember being in this digs room, rehearsing in front of a mirror, I'd say for 2 hours on my own. I was absolutely forensic. So I kind of connect back, because I mean, that's the first time I had that memory of being really forensic, going through gags, rehearsing the piece and having all the bullet points. Because you don't write, we never wrote stand-up down. Like, I don't write it like I would write a play. It was just bullet points or ideas. And then you would speak them to the mirror and perform to the mirror. That was how I did it.
Did he give you pointers how to generate it? Like, how did he create that module? How did he teach stand-up, as it were?
How did he teach it? He just told us he brought us to the club a lot.
Yeah.
He told us to go away and find things we found funny and come back with a model. I mean, it was a bit of a DOS for Hugh, basically. He was going...
But you got your livelihood post-college out of it, and you were really well established on the circuit. I remember being over in the Comedy Store in Leicester Square, and your picture was there.
Yes,
with a little shrine in front of it, candles burning, and people prostrating themselves in front of it. I don't know what that was about.
Oh, that's because
am I misremembering?
It's because I became a cult with an L.
And then
no, I don't think it's there anymore. But that period of the circuit where you could get open spots really quickly. I think I did 6 gigs that all went really well before I had a bad gig or before I got heckled. So I kind of was going, well, I can do this.
Yeah.
Okay, it might go shit. I was very masculine and, macho clubs as well. The bigger clubs were quite macho. The smaller clubs were bonkers and were lovely.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember?
I remember.
Do you remember the Iceman? The performance artist who used to bring a block of ice and melt it, and that was his act. It was nuts. And Woody Bop Muddy.
I was going to say Woody Bop Muddy. Didn't he run a club was in Brixton?
I think it was in Brixton, yeah.
Yeah.
And he had Record Graveyard, and he'd smash all the records up.
I love playing those. That's where I started out. I worked with 2 of the women, and we called ourselves Doris Karloff, and we were doing really silly sketches, early 20s. Hadn't a clue what we were doing, but I loved the atmosphere in London at the time, which was you could try, and it's just when, as people realise there's a career, or they see people making a career out of it, it suddenly becomes very
as people got agents and people got onto TV, then other people were coming to see shows. I mean, it's interesting, I heard Jimmy Carr being interviewed, a really old interview about 15 years ago, and he was saying when you see big gigs, like on the telly or whatever, you go, oh, wow, I could do comedy. And he had that feeling, and he said it's only when you start going to the smaller clubs and you really watch the work that you understand how things can fail. He said, well, you can't fail when you're famous in front of 2,000 people.
Yeah.
He said, everybody's bought in to watch you, and you've got your 10 writers working for you or whatever. Yeah. It's in those small clubs when you start off, that's where you really see comedy, and that's where you learn how to do comedy. You have to do it in front of a live audience.
Another thing I would say about learning to do comedy, and if you wanted to be a comedian that people don't realise when they look at it from outside, is just the reality of living the life and the ups and the downs, and it's the same with being an actor, a writer, or anything. That the bigger picture is the life around it and the resilience you have to just keep chipping away. But I do. But tell us about when you were starting out in the comedy in England.
It was I suppose it's
so you passed the module, I would say.
I passed the module. Yes, I got my degree. No, it was a great thing to come out of college with, I suppose, because but for me, I never wanted to be a stand-up. I wanted to be an actor. Since I was 4. I remember being in the school play or doing the sort of tiny auditions, going in and, the teacher reading out that I wasn't Mary. I was about 4. I was outraged. I remember thinking, that girl can't act. I mean, who is making these decisions? Hilariously. So I had a very, very... sort of ambitious, focused sense that I wanted to be an actor. So as a kid, I did all the drama stuff. I went to drama classes. Oh my God, my poor family. I went and joined the YMCA drama group that was run by this amazing hippie woman. This is in the 70s, remember? Norwich in the 70s.
Yeah.
And all my family came to see me play Jesus Christ in a white sheet, dancing in slow motion to Pink Floyd. And this woman had got some of her hippie friends involved. So there was a really tall adult man. You just wouldn't be able to do this. Now, I mean, it was no weirdness about it. I just kind of go the optics of it. Yeah. And I was like a tiny little skinny, you know, I don't know, 10-year-old. And I was in a sheet with my long blonde hair being a version of Jesus. And he was a big tall fella. And he was lifting me up and throwing me around the place. And it was supposed to be like
Who
the
was
passion. He was just some bloke. I don't know, he might have been her boyfriend.
He was...
Can't remember.
Spiritual energy.
But he was sort of, it was the sort of passion of Christ, and it was all in slow motion. And clearly this was her vision. And I just remember looking up and seeing my aunties and uncles, all very traditional Norwich people, sitting there going, in their minds, what the effing flip is this? But I just thought it was amazing. I thought it was brilliant.
I'd go and see that. That sounds fantastic. But that's what
it kind of was fantastic.
Yeah.
Can imagine being that age and, you know, and then I went into the amateur drama groups, and you're working with other adults. And in those days, people didn't really have that sense of you being a kid.
Yeah.
People were having conversations in front of me. I thought it was all very boho and, you know, bohemian and exciting. And I just went, this is fantastic.
And then as you got more and more used to it, you understood the whole field, how did you see your career going? What was your ideal career you wanted as an actor?
I don't know. We didn't, I mean, you know, like you said, I didn't have a clue. Yeah. I just had a very clear sense that I wanted to be an actor. And to be an actor, you had to go to London. That's all I kind of knew. Yeah. I mean, I went to a secondary modern school in Norwich. Everybody was really supportive. Yeah. But... you know, my parents were very supportive. It was kind of those days of follow your dream, do what makes you happy. Like, my parents did not say to me, don't be stupid, get a real job.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But at the same time, you remember, it was free education.
It was that wonderful moment in England. It breaks my heart. My mum lives in Manchester. When I got over there, I just feel that atmosphere.
Oh, so changed, isn't it? So different.
England has changed so much. I think that thing about education is just so important. And
I wouldn't have. I mean, my parents were very good. They did a thing where you could, I think, against your tax, you could give your children, like, I don't know, they gave me £200 a year or something towards my degree, and that was what they could afford.
One thing I realised when I trained in London, I got a scholarship when I was over there and trained in Alra, is that once you're in the system, you realise really the best way to get on is to go to one of the top schools, which is RADA, Lambda, Guildhall, Bristol Old Vic, Central.
The Guildhall, the actual drama schools. I think I had a sense of that. Like, I knew RADA was the best school. I did know.
Did you audition for that?
I auditioned for RADA, and I was 17, and I'd had no sort of. I mean, I'd been doing all this drama, but I don't think I had that kind of shining RADA sort of talent. And that was the first sort of realisation of, oh, there's a much bigger world and you're a much smaller fish. Because I think in Norwich, in the drama groups, you know, you're sort of minded and you're getting lead roles, of course you are. You know, I mean, I was quite talented. And so you think you're great. Yeah. And then you go for your audition in the big city and you realise, oh, there's a lot of amazing people out here and I'm a little tiny fish.
It was somebody in London said to me, if you really want a career in acting, go to Oxford or Cambridge. Go to Oxford, Cambridge, then train in one of those big five, and then by the time you come out of drama college, everybody you went to college with is going to be in positions of power. The BBC.
Didn't I only realise
that is the way to do
year,
it.
Anne?
Yeah. I remember. I'll always say this. I remember there was. It was an event for Dublin lesbians, and they booked me and you, and they were really nice ladies. But I remember being really nervous because my material, one, was very heterosexual, and two, I wasn't totally grounded in my material for a long, long time. I think maybe only in the last 4 years. But And I remember getting up and like doing my stuff, and somebody shouted, "We don't want to hear this," because it was that hetero vibe. And, you know, and I could feel this sinking feeling inside myself of, yeah, I agree with you. And just not finding a way to front it out and being quite timid. You know, I get, you know, and then other people go, "No, let her finish." So then it's an argument of the ladies go, "No, give her," and rather than owning the space. And then you getting up and just going, "Come on, lesbians," and just having that strength. And you were fantastic, absolutely fantastic at what you did. You were fantastic at the stand-up, or, you know. And there is this old adage in showbiz, somebody told me, which is do everything, and whatever works, that's what you should be doing. And so did you not have that niggly
I think that's true now. I mean, you know, I've seen you do amazing work over the years. You know, with the Nulas, amazing work, amazing songs. And then in the last, you know, 2 or 3 years, create your own solo, you know, full shows. And, you know, I do go, "Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, I wonder if I could create a show," because I have that background, but I don't know if I could, but I think it's still there maybe in my toolbox to do something like that. Because I see the storytelling, because what I wanted, I think, what I love about theatre, once I got over the fact that I'm kind of quite a good performer, I'm a not bad actor, but I'm not a brilliant actor. And I got bitten by the bug of writing. And it's something that I think it's sort of seeing the whole picture of something. And again, that's what appeals to me now about the possibility of stand-up, or the possibility of a show, that you're telling something. So these are just forms in which we might want to tell something. Whenever, another thing a dramaturg does, bringing it back, reincorporating, is to say, what's the form? So should this story be told as a film? Is it a TV series? Is it a stand-up show? What's the best way of telling this story? I think that's what interests me as well. So I think stand-up is an amazing format. I don't know if I go back into doing it, because it's also terrifying. I mean, the 20-minute set, we've said this before, the 20-minute set is terrifying in a club, when people, you're just rocking up.
You're rocking up,
and
they
your
paid
gags
at
have
the
to
door,
land.
and they haven't paid to see you and to win them over. It is the absolute best training, but it is relentless and wearing as a way of earning a living.
Whereas I think if you have a story or a show that you want to tell, and you're telling it through stand-up, then maybe you don't have to have a gag every 20 seconds. I mean, you still, if you're saying this is a comedy show, then we should be laughing. That's my view. But yeah, I think I did find it lonely, and that's why I loved coming to Dublin, because the comedy circuit here, as it started, everybody was going down to the cellar, and everybody was hanging out and supporting each other, and that was what I had imagined it should be like.
It should be like,
So there was a lot of kind of camaraderie with that, and I think it's where I met. I think it's where people met. It's where you, Sue, Tara met. It's where the Nulas initiated. It's where I kind of met Karen and started doing double act, although we had met on a play. People were drawn to it. People were coming to it and hanging out. And it was quite an experimental space, because Trellis had started off by doing sketches, not purely stand-up. There was a real mix of what people were doing.
Which was the instinct in London way back when, at the beginning of the city. There was a real sketch and try this and try that, and then it just all gets tight, and you've got, this is the way.
I think that's it.
Works.
In retrospect, I think that's what sort of attracted me to it. I mean, I think back to, you know, the YMCA and dancing around as Jesus. You know, there is something in me that's quite, I suppose, interested in the experimental, and that's what had kind of drawn me. Like, I remember seeing Vic Reeves in the Greyhound in Sydenham. I remember going to one of their gigs.
Was that when he had started out? Because
he
used to be down in Deptford. Was his name?
It was Deptford. Then I saw a gig in Sydenham, and it was him and Bob Mortimer. And they just had tables of toys, and sort of loads of people in there. I mean, I didn't really fully understand it. I knew it was a clique of people. But it was mad, and I really liked that about it.
I love mad.
they were just making comedy and playing with all these toys. And it was a sort of bonkers evening. And I did sort of think, there's part of me that's quite organised. Like, I like beginning, middle, ends. I like to know, I like to be included in something. And with that, I felt like, oh, I'm a little bit on the outside of this, but it's exciting.
Yeah.
And I think as things became more the guy or the girl standing at a microphone, being quite, you know, deflecting, doing gags, I kind of felt that epitomizes to me a sort of loneliness.
I know exactly what you mean.
I love watching comedians, and I love storytelling. I love theatre that includes you. It can be spiky, it can be edgy, it can be dark, it can be dangerous, but I want to feel that there's some sort of inclusion. I think that's why I love theatre. I love live performance.
Yeah.
And I want to go on a journey with it. So I'm less interested in short form stand-up. I like shows like you're doing. I like to go on a journey with it. And I think that's why I moved into theatre, because I'd always loved it from being a kid. But the forms within which you can tell stories are wider. And I think theatre can take on lots of things. Like when I was teaching out in Coláiste Dúlaigh on a BA top-up degree for several years. And one of the things I was teaching was live art. And because of that crossover now between a live art practice that's coming into theatre.
What's live art? Is it like performance art?
It's like performance art. I suppose it would be more part of the art world, but it's crossed over in the theatre practice. Theatre has started taking these ideas.
Do a comedy performance art show. I think it'd be
it would be very funny.
Because I used to do performance art in the street in festivals.
But this is the thing that people... I think sometimes with live art or performance art, it was seen as very earnest, and actually a lot of it's very funny.
Yeah.
And then, like the Battersea Arts Centre were doing this over in London, a lot of one-on-one performance where you go in and you meet one person. And Pan Pan Theatre Company did that here a few years ago. And I've always been really interested in one-on-one performance as well, because it's so intimate. I like this, and I like immersive theatre. I like going over to London to see, say, Punch Drunk or these companies. But I remember seeing Geraldine. Oh, what's Geraldine's surname? She's a very famous Irish actor. Geraldine Plunkett.
Yeah.
And there were 100 rooms, I think, or I don't know if it's 100, but I got Geraldine, and we had this conversation, and she performed a section of Hamlet for me, and I will always feel deeply privileged to have had that experience and to have that memory. I think a lot of my memories are around... A lot of important memories, I think, are around seeing pieces of performance or connecting to performance.
What is your standout play or theatre experience do you have one in your whole history of going to the theatre?
Yes, it's my own show. I'm here to talk about me. Oh God, I seeing immersive work at a scale that Punch Drunk do was astonishing. Going over and seeing a show of theirs in an old post office.
What is immersive? What does that mean?
Immersive theatre is where you walk into a room and the theatre is happening all around you, and everything in the room is a prop or a piece of set, and performers are walking past you. So you're in the show. It's like being in a film. And the scale at which Punch Drunk do it is filmic. So, but immersive could simply mean you know, I saw a beautiful piece by Anu in the old Magdalen, one of the Magdalen laundries. And you're brought into the sort of hallway, and the three of you, and then a character came and took my hand at one point and took me off into the church and just told me her story. And I know that actor. That actor was Barbara Niqueve, who was amazing. But she was a character, and she was telling me a story about her life in the Magdalen laundries. I got very emotional, started crying. Then she disappeared off, and then some other people brought me out the back, where one girl is saying, I'm trying to escape. And then the next thing, I'm in a taxi being driven around the corner to a laundrette. So that is... I mean, many people will know the work of Anu. They're quite famous, but that is an immersive. So you're not sitting in your theatre seat watching it. So I love that. I haven't made any of that work myself because, well, I say that I have.
Yeah.
I have, because I ran
you
a theatre
did?
company with Tara Derrington for about
Yeah,
10
you
years,
did
and
do
we
a piece,
did.
I remember.
We developed a show. It was Tara's baby, but I helped to develop it, and it was
I
written.
always remember that because my brother Kevin was in there, and it was an immersive piece you did in a house.
Well, that was a different piece.
Oh, was that a different piece?
We did a piece in a house on Gardner Street.
The reason I remember that is because Kevin was involved in that, and he was bringing a show to Edinburgh that year, and I kept saying to him, but what about your show in Edinburgh? And he went, well, I really want to do this.
That show, we were working with a lot of improv, because I was doing improv with the Dublin Comedy Improv, which I still do. That group of people. And then I met Tara, and she was really interested in the improv. And we were given a space by the arts officer for Dublin City Council at the time, Jack, who was instrumental in getting the lab built, and then retired after that. But is an amazing person, and we were given space up in the old Parnell, you know where the Irish Writers' Centre is, and it was an old ballroom in there. And I mean, there were like holes in the floor. It was like, be careful where you go, but you can have this room. And for about 9 months, we had a regular workshop with about 15 comedians and actors who would all drop in. Through amazing Josie O'Reilly, who worked with the Nulas and was over living in Ireland, she knew some American improvisers, and we got them in to do a workshop. And we just kind of created these shows, but it was also a way of, I think, for me, working with an ensemble. Yeah. And that mix of comics and actors and people who were coming from slightly different areas, but we all were able to just take that time. I think it was during the 90s, early 2000s.
And did you create work out of that?
We did. We created about 3 shows out of that, all quite experimental. I'm not sure how focused they were. I don't know, but I think we were so interested in the process. So that show in the house in Gardner Street, it was based around a bunch of actors who had created a kind of a living space, and that's where the company name then came from. And they were living their art. So it was a comedy concept. And then Pom Boyd wrote some of the scenes for us. There was a bonkers scene where I think I had Nutella smeared on my breasts, and Natalie Stringer was dragging herself through the room, and I remember somebody who was in the audience, I think it was Eddie Bannon, saying he nearly choked himself laughing at that scene. So we were kind of employing a lot of comedy and some sort of theatre experimentation. The idea behind that show really was to see if we could do it and to see how you moved audience around, and then that work developed into a show we did in 2008 in the Dublin Theatre Festival in an apartment that was called You Are Here. It was written by an amazing playwright called Johanna, and it was about sort of the residue that people leave in an apartment. And so there were an audience of, I think, 12 could come into that space, and they were separated up into 3s, and you would see glimpses of characters. But if you opened a drawer, you might hear a voice from the past, and some of those voices were in different languages. So it was about the kind of layers that you might find in a modern day apartment.
The thing about all that work, and it's fascinating, is it's quite esoteric, and it doesn't have, the thing about comedy is a much broader audience. Does that does the reach of where your work is going matter to you, or do you?
I think the audience in the room are the people who are meant to be there. I think it's like with any situation. So the people who came to see that show. So over the last 2 years, I've been touring a very personal show about remembering my mum, called On a House Like a Fire. And when we were creating it, I developed it with the composer Brian Keegan. And when we were creating it, I mean, it's not funny at all. There are some funny bits in it to me. They don't necessarily make an audience laugh because the show is quite melancholic.
and it's for very small audiences. For me, really, it's for 10 people, but being a bit more realistic, we had to sort of extend it out, so it's maybe a maximum of 50 people. And we have subsequently done it in larger spaces, and it's okay. It does work. I always want I want the audience to be quite close to it. We did it in Bewley's in May for 3 weeks as part of the Bealtaine Festival just gone, and Bewley's is an amazing room. It's about 50 or 60 people, and it feels a bit like a hug when you're in it. So it is a cafe theatre, and it was really lovely to bring the show there. So again, it's about the form, and it's about the type of show. If the show has that, and that show is really about starting a conversation with an audience about remembering, and it's told in quite a fragmented style because it's about the nature of memory. So, and in a way, when I think about where I started in comedy, I'm really excited by the fact that I can work in something that is melancholic. I can work in comedy. I wrote the show for the Gaiety School of Acting last year.
Wonderful,
which was a big comedy.
It was wonderful. You see, what I think about comedy is that it's the hardest thing to do, and if you can do that, you know.
I don't know. I mean, I know that is said, and it is to make an audience laugh.
I mean, have you ever worked with people who've no timing, and you're just going over and over the line?
That is true.
But I think this is the way it is.
But we're both aware that there are easy gags. And again, I come back to that sense of if there is a world for something and you put the wrong gag in, people will laugh because once we're laughing and somebody says fuck, we might laugh at that. Yeah. Or there's a gag that goes off, and I often say you're watching something and you're thinking, this comedy has gone off in the wrong direction now. It's just easy.
Yeah, but the masters don't do that. Someone like Eddie Izzard would never do that.
That's
Dylan Moran.
True. But I also think I do think it's hard to make something that's moving as well. I think it could. So working on A House Like a Fire, struggled with that again. Like you were talking about finding the form of things, finding the form of a show and the pathway it's going to go. Finding the form of something, when I started with that show, I thought it was going to be storytelling.
Yeah.
And it was only through working with the composer, working with Brian, who brought in music, and we were able to put music onto the whole thing, that I was able to then work in fragments or small pieces. And that made sense of the whole form, because the thing is about memory is broken up, it's repetitive. So that was really interesting. And then there are moments of humour in it, but they're much gentler. So,
but it's interesting in the form of stand-up too, because there is scope within that. I don't know how you felt about it when you started, but when I started out, I think it was through particularly seeing the guys, like, because I would have been at college with Barry and Ardle, and then coming back to Dublin, seeing Kevin, Barry and Ardle, and their stand-up was always gags. It was very isolated gags, tenuously strung together, or held, say, like in Ardle's case, held together by his persona. I'm Ardle, I'm going to tell you some stuff. And it was very bitty. But then you have, but then there's a whole story to, because Sue Collins used to always say to me, I really like to feel I've been told a story. And I never thought of it that way. And it's only recently I've been really thinking about that, because you can. There's amazing scope within even just that form of layering in that you've actually told something.
But we were talking about this before we started, and I think it's really interesting. Do you extend or do you advance? So I quite like watching comedy as well, where there might not be a story, there might not be an advance, a narrative, a proceeding. What there might be, though, is a lot of extending out sideways. So we're playing with a character. That's what improv does. Yeah. So when you get on stage and do improv, one of the kind of rules is don't try to storytell, don't try to plot this, because you can't plot with 5 people on stage, because none of us know what we're doing. People come and see the improv and think we've practiced it, and we really haven't. Yeah. But we do have game structures that we use. So this game this game I can only say 2 words and you can only say 3 words, or in this game we're speaking 1 word at a time. So there's loads of different games. But the whole idea of we're looking in a scene to find the game, or to find the crazy character, or to extend and extend and extend on that, or to heighten and heighten and heighten, because that's where the playfulness comes in improv. And I think it's interesting with stand-ups. Stand-ups do use that. When you look at, I mean, Eddie Izzard is the classic of that. He would find a thing and then he would just extend and extend.
And then the surreal and
the surreal. But I mean, he would still, and then that would take the story in a different direction. But you have to allow that to happen. You can't be ploughing forward all the time. And I mean, I think the guys are the same. I mean, Ardle with his persona, and I think Palm Boyd, you know, with the Windy Lady.
Yeah, I loved her characters because none of her characters were obvious. My favourite of her characters was this country girl who's actually like a boy and dressed as a cowboy. And it really expressed something about so many women I would have known growing up who were quite masculine. It was so clever and so well observed. She was amazing. Like, I remember seeing Palm doing her show in Edinburgh, and she was in the same venue as Mira Sial, and there was a real moment around Palm. And I think, maybe the acting was always drawing her somewhere else, and the whole chipping away at comedy wasn't for her. But she's such a brilliant comedian. She's so funny. Windy Lady.
And a brilliant actor and a brilliant writer, and she was sort of doing all those things as well. I do think it's the form you're looking for, and I suppose having those skills, being aware that improv is about play and stand-up can be about that as well, or it can be about storytelling, and all those elements can go into theatre.
Although club comedy is often about crowd control and reading the room, gagging, I think it can wear the soul. You know,
But do you think that's also an older thing? Like, I look back, I sometimes, the reason I don't really go and see a lot of stand-up is because it's younger people doing it, and it's stuff I've heard before, and that's not in a bad way. Some of them are telling it really well and in new ways, but I've heard it before. It's not aimed at me. I'm not 20, I'm not 30. Yeah. You know, so I am looking for stories that I'm interested in at my age.
I do think, I mean... It's that thing of just, but it's just that thing, that you realise that actually being older and having stuff to tell is really interesting as you get older.
But only to other older people. Younger people are like, in your 20s, one of the biggest things going on is your sex drive, and that's what you want to talk about. I mean, that was, it's kind of overwhelming. You're dealing with these kind of hormones, and then those sort of start to go where you have kids, or you're dealing with all the real world problems. But in your 20s, it's about romance, and it's about passion, and you're passionate about things. It's about music, or friendships.
But I just remember when the lads Kevin, Barry, and Ardle started off in the cellar. One thing I loved about what they did when I come back from London and look at their stuff is they actually never talked about sex.
That's true.
I just loved that about what they did, that they were in. I just loved their perspective. They were so brilliant. They were so
brilliant, and with the sketches were bonkers.
Oh, they were so good. And I remember
hiring or firing.
They made this amazing pilot with some telly station. It was RT, some other telly station, and RT were a bit on the back foot with pushing it forward. And the pilot is amazing. It's groundbreaking and so hilarious. You look at it and you go, "This is."
And why didn't it get made? It didn't.
Just lack of push through.
She was too amazing.
It was too amazing. But I think with any of those things, and again, looking back, you kind of go, it's not just about getting the deal. It's not about somebody saying, we'll give you a pilot, and you think, brilliant, we're in. I have very little experience. Again, I'm improvising here. But my sense of it is that you need your producer to kind of be in the gang. You need, I heard Monty Python. I know that we all kind of know the stories of Monty Python, but they were left on their own to do stuff. And they had been taught. Cambridge or Oxford or wherever it was. They knew their producers as well. But I think if you're trying to get stuff done and it's a sort of outsider is not on your side pushing it through, you need a power broker inside to push the thing through for you.
Oh yeah, it was on,
And you see that, I think, with some of the people who succeed in the UK, comics who've succeeded, you hear the story of
our producer was totally on side with us and was doing that work behind the scenes.
It seems to me now it's so competitive, and there's such knowingness around the whole, it's an industry and it's a career. I used to laugh when I started out when people talk about their career. I used to also go, what do you mean career? You're an artist. I don't know. It began to be a whole different way of looking at it. There was just a different atmosphere around. It was kind of mad people. There's a lot of mad people trying stuff, and I've always loved mad people trying stuff. But now it seems you have to be very strategic.
Yeah, I think, again, it's growing up and realising that. But we grew up in a time of, where
there was a bit of space.
Political, economic, social sort of turbulence going on. But there was a lot of space because you could survive. And where you have that, I don't think people fully get this. You need that for alternative thinking, be it in the arts or be it in business or be it in anything. I think if you don't have that space, and I think also artistic ideas don't necessarily come quickly or in straight lines. So, yeah, I mean, one of the jobs. Reincorporate the dramaturg. One of the jobs of the dramaturg in any kind of theatre is to speed things up. Be that for good or bad. You're when you're having creative ideas, yourself, you're going, hang on, what is this? And it has to evolve and it has to develop, and it can take a long while. You put it in a drawer, you come back to it. Now it makes sense to me. I've got a bit of distance on it. I think that happens with a lot of artistic ideas. So it doesn't follow a kind of prescribed route. You can't say, Monday morning, we're going to be working on this. I mean, people do. I do. I get up. I sound like a complete hippie now, but I don't. I go and sit at a desk all day and work at stuff, but sometimes stuff happens and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, deadlines are brilliant. I do love a deadline on a project, but I think if you want to go deep with something, you have to work on it. Then you have to leave it and let it mull and come back to it to understand it.
You absolutely love the theatre, but you keep the improv going.
Yeah, totally. We've been doing improv since 1992. I suppose myself and Ian Coppinger would be there from the beginning. And there were a huge amount of people who've come and gone. I think Dylan was in the improv.
Oh, he was. Yeah, Sue was in the improv.
Sue was in the improv. Of course, she was. Yeah. There were loads of different people over the years in the improv, and I think I was just saying, if we'd ever tried to run it as a business, it would have been a disaster because it wouldn't exist now. I think the fact that it feeds all the people who do it. So at the moment, the lineup is
feeds creatively.
Yes. So Paul Tylak, Joe Rooney, who people who like comedy would know, Ian Coppinger, who people would know, Kevin Gildee, your wonderful brother, myself, and then Sharon Mannion and Danny Keogh, and Graham Singleton, who we consider to be younger comics, but
I remember when they joined.
They're full grown ups
and they
with
were
their kids.
New young energy in there.
New young energy. No, but they are. So that's the gang, and it's the international bar upstairs on a Sunday night. Plug. But
Danny and Sharon were interesting. They're a couple. Absolutely love improv. They went over and did workshops in Chicago, didn't they?
They did. And I remember back in the day, I did a workshop. I did a summer school in Calgary with Loose Moose improv, which was fantastic. I think it's where sort of theatre meets comedy, improv, because I mean it was used as training. It's theatre. Anybody who's done theatre training will know a lot of those improv books. Yeah, but Keith Johnston's improv books. Viola
you say all that, but what's brilliant about you is you're just so good at finding the gag. Like, to me,
it's a load of comics. You've got a load of comics.
I know, but you're very funny, is the thing.
Thanks, Anne. A load of comics and then doing improv. And a lot of the people who are doing improv are also act. Like, everybody does everything here. Like, that's what you need to do. But it's incredibly enjoyable. We were talking about the whole solo thing, and I was saying I'm always looking for my tribe. I'm always, but at the same time, I'm a bit of a lone wolf. I love to go off and write on my own. I like spending time by myself, creating a world. But it's so fantastic to come and do it. Improv is not like stand-up. You're not having to get out there on your own. Okay, you have to share the glory, but I mean, doing a scene with Kevin is fantastic. Like, Kevin's brain works in so many different ways to my own. And then I like creating characters,
And we will have those, and you know, and then Danny works a different way, and Sharon. It's just fantastic getting on stage.
And you've worked together for decades.
We have.
So you kind of
So we're comfortable. We know that the space is safe.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to throw you under the bus. The biggest thing we have to worry about is laughing too much on stage ourselves.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, it's great to be able to do that. It's great to have that play space, because I think it helps our brains as performers and writers.
I think that a lot of stand-ups would do improv to keep that comedy brain working.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Because it's drawing on the subconscious. Like, the older I've got, the more I realise that your subconscious is doing. You're putting a lot of information in there. I mean, I think the CIA did some sort of test with older operatives and younger operatives.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, you know, it was one of these tests where you have to walk through a zone and figure out where the snipers will be. And the older operatives were really good at doing that. And somebody said, oh, that must be intuition. And they said, no, it's 20 years of experience on the job. And that becomes what we call intuition. Because we absorb all this information and understanding, and it goes into your subconscious. Like, if I'm working on a play, I might have a lot of information that I'm trying to take in, and maybe even raw research. And I've come to learn we don't want raw research spewed back at us in any form. So you have to kind of read it, then you have to forget about it. You almost have to let it just go into your subconscious. And then be able to draw on it, or it to inform what you're writing about. And I think with the improv, those comedy moments, that sense of being funny in front of an audience, that sense of enjoyment goes into your subconscious and feeds you.
And it was interesting what you were saying about that you feel it's all held together because it's not been run as business with that pressure of, you know,
it's a collaboration.
Buck from it, that it's a real labour of love.
You know, that's whatever it is, tiny stage, so much creativity, and so many people who are now world famous have been through that stage.
Thanks.
And you're welcome. And like many people who are not world famous but are out there doing amazing work, you know, bringing up their kids, teaching class, doing whatever, because they had that experience on that stage. It's not all about, you know, super fame. It's also about, you know, art is working at so many different levels. You know, and I've had the privilege to work with a lot of people who are well known, and see them and be, you know, be in the room with Eddie Izzard in the early days. I saw Joe Brand in the early days. I saw how brilliant they were. It was really enjoyable watching Eddie Izzard going from finding his thing. Like, he was trying to do very sort of pedestrian stand-up, and he found his thing, and everybody on the circuit, it went round like, what? Eddie's found his thing.
I remember I started out in Covent Garden, and I remember him actually
doing street stuff.
He came down and organised everybody when there was an issue about, is somebody going to take over the West Piazza and try and control it, and suddenly Eddie appeared back, and he was such a great organiser. And I had to follow him once because he was running a club in Soho, the Bull's Eye or something, and there was a club on Carnaby Street, and I was doing my shitty open spot material, and he had to go on first because he was going around to his club, and he was doing the material about the wolves if they had a car.
Oh yeah.
And they were hunting in a car.
God, I love that
and
material.
the wolves were leaning out the car, and I was just watching it going, this is just genius. This is another level. I have to get up and do my...
I know.
But I did it. That's the wonderful thing about being on the circuit. You
got to see all these people, and then people take that off, you know, wherever. Like, so I moved into doing, I really wanted to be an actor, and I really wanted to work with theatre. And once I got to Ireland, I was still working doing stand-up, started to do improv. Gosh, that was brilliant. And then started to get acting gigs, you know, and it was hard because I wasn't Irish, so it was a little English voice, you know, I think that was the spur. I was getting some work, but that was the spur for me to start writing plays. I went, I need to make something for myself, and stand-up isn't quite right. And I started writing plays, and they were comedy plays. Like, you probably remember
romantic...
Lost Letters of a Victorian Lady was first, which was a real parody one, and that was with Ned Dennehy and Mark O'Halloran were in that, and it was fantastic working with them. and Sue Mythen was director. I remember Sue saying, I said, I've got these letters.
All of them are really famous now. Sue was famous because Paul Mescal.
Sue was an amazing movement director.
Yeah, and Paul Mescal thanked her in an acceptance speech.
Oh, that's
Ned
right.
Dennehy's in every film.
He's in loads of films.
Where they need a
and Mark
strange man.
O'Halloran is a brilliant playwright and actor.
Yeah.
But I had them first in my play. With hilarious couple of actors. And so that was an amazing. I remember Sue saying to me, I had been writing comedy letters to a friend, and I said, I think this might be a play, to Sue Mythen. And she said, yeah, but you have to make it into a play. So she really helped as the director to work on that and create that as a comedy play. And then I wrote Romantic Friction, which was about a romance writer whose characters come out of the book. And again, what I loved about that is working with other people. Again, it was a comedy. I had a lot of gags in it. But I remember doing it and took it to Edinburgh and got a Fringe first for that, which was amazing. Sort of, oh, I can write something that's funny and that's a play. But I think my favourite moment from that was it was a romance. So it was a parody of a romance, but it was also a romance. And there was a moment at the end where the hero comes back and the audience would go...
Knocks on the door.
And the audience would go... and they would gasp. And I went, that's interesting. I've been able to make people laugh, but I've made an audience gasp.
I remember that moment, wasn't it? He knocks on the door, everybody gasps, and they're expecting a declaration of love, and he says something like, "You forgot your umbrella."
Yeah. And everybody goes, "Oh!"
But I loved that moment.
But I think for me, I mean that, I mean these are
and
90s,
then it was turned into a BBC Radio 4 drama.
Yes,
yeah,
it
comedy
was, and that was through you guys. It was through being in Edinburgh at the time, and your producer, Nula's producer, Joe Clegg, came and saw that and said, "We'll make it into a radio show." And then I worked with a lovely another producer, Dawn, to do that. But I think that was the realization that. I could manipulate an audience in a different way. Because I think theatre and performance is about understanding technically how you're bringing an audience into something. And I think that was really interesting. I mean, those plays are 90s plays now, but I wanted to I went, wow, I'm interested in writing. I'm interested in writing more than I'm interested in performing.
Oh, wow.
And I still perform and I was still acting, but I was much more interested in creating that world. And then of course you realize how little you know. You have success in something, you're in it, you're doing it, you're young. It's like my first doing stand-up. I didn't know any better. I just went this.
But that is the best way.
I didn't have the fear.
So when you look at all you have done, do you feel a sense of fulfillment about that journey, and what more is calling to you?
I do. I have to remind myself what I've done. I mean, I was a bit wary about having this conversation in a way because I didn't know what we were gonna talk about. But I think it's really valuable to think about your past and to think about what you've done and how one thing has led to another. And I think that's really interesting to do. So I am really proud of what I've been able to achieve. But I'm still really pushing to understand, particularly with playwriting and playmaking. Again, it's a group activity, so it's all very well me going off and writing a play, but I need a company to produce it, and I need funding to produce it, and all of those things, which are harder and harder to do. So those are the struggles ahead. But I think, I see all those different strands sort of feeding in to what I do. And I work in community contexts as well. I make plays with children. I make plays with senior citizens. I remember you coming out and seeing some of the plays I did in Tala.
With the kids. They were hilarious.
Yeah.
They were and you were brilliant with them. You really drew it out of them.
That was an exciting programme as well, to kind of go, what can we create and how can we create it? And because of my experience of improv, I knew if we put some sort of structure in place, so it's not just what do you want to write about, and if we create some sort of structure for the children to work within, then they can come up with stuff, and then we can form that into a play. So like we were coming up with characters, we were coming up with a story, then we started writing dialogue for the characters, and maybe we wrote a song, and then we've got this 15-minute play. And then what I realised the first time is I was trying to get the kids to read it, and they were only 9 or 10, and some of them had difficulties with reading, so got actors in to read it. So then they heard, that was when
that's when it came to, I heard
children heard
reading.
their play performed by actors, and that was what they were shouting out, that's my line, I wrote, that's my character. So then they heard it kind of optimally, and then they were able to go off with their teachers.
And then did they perform it in front of their parents? And then
they did them in, some of them did them in schools. That was the aim of that. Yeah.
You have an amazing skill in that way. I was blown away. I was going, wow, you make it look so easy, but you drew the creativity you drew out, the kids, and the space, you know, the way you just managed the whole space with the kids was phenomenal.
I think that's from doing a lot of the sort of improv, because I would have taught improv and different sorts of facilitation. I would have worked. And then I love that as well. The idea of, I think, teaching or leading workshops that are in my areas like play reading or drama or theatre.
And then you're working with older people.
Yeah, and that's a recent thing actually through Floating World Theatre, which is run by an amazing woman called Andrea Scott, who you should probably also interview. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And she set up this company of older senior citizens with the Mill Theatre back in 2018. And I think they started with an idea for one project, and it's just developed and developed and developed. So you've got this elders community theatre group. They're between 65 and 85.
Wow.
And they are fantastic. And they wanted to work on a piece of research about this playwright, Teresa Deevy, from the 1930s. And she was an Abbey playwright. She kind of disappeared.
I've never heard her name. Yeah.
And they were fascinated by that. And she subsequently was kind of rediscovered by academics and then by other theatre makers. And so we did some research into her, and I worked with them, and we wrote a play about the elders group rediscovering her and how much that meant to them and who she was and the era she lived in.
Has that
the
been
context on? And that was on in the Mill Theatre just there at the beginning of February.
Oh, because we were doing a show out there, but I was concentrating on
we were
my
on
own
the same
show.
night.
And
we were in the studio and you were on the main stage.
Oh,
we're on the same night. So look at us go.
Now that do you find it? I just find at this age, I just have to focus on the one thing, and I've been so focused on my show and just getting it up to speed that now you tell me about that and go, God, I really want to see that, because I really want to see their perspective on it.
It's very moving seeing them perform it. Watching a group of performers figure out and perform the piece is also, I think, really powerful.
And I'm so annoyed that I missed that piece.
I think it will come back.
I hope you're going to do more. Is it?
I think so.
Let me know. I really want to see it. Tell me, what's the plan going forward?
I'm at the point where I've done a huge amount of work over the last 2 years. I've done my show about my mum. I wrote the show for the Gaiety School last year, which was for 17 people. I made this show with the Dublin Elders. There's 15 of them. So these big, totally immersed in those projects. I have 2 plays of my own now that I want to try and develop and write. So what I've spent the last month doing is applying for funding and trying to make space for myself. One of the piece, I think you gave me the idea for, I had my hip replaced last year. So I want to write, I'm developing a show called Hip, that's about a character who is older and an artist in some way, and it's quite hip. And then she has to have a hip replacement, and that whole idea of frailty, personal frailty. But I think it's also an opportunity for her to reflect on her past, a bit like we're doing today, and for that to maybe come back at her and challenge her. So I'm interested in developing that show. And I'm also writing another show that is about 3 women, a mother and her 2 grown-up daughters. And it's really interesting looking at the form of that show, because for me, that's about the mother-daughter relationship. And you talk about that in your show. Yeah. And I'm interested in looking at that within a show that jumps backwards and forwards in time between the 70s and the current day. Yeah. And to look at what, I suppose, mothering, you know, what it's like to be our mothers had a very different experience of being mothers from, say, contemporary women. So of the 2 daughters I've got, one is a mother, and she has small children, and her sister, it doesn't have children. And it's kind of looking at those choices. And I think looking at them kind of in the context of the last 50 years. So that's I suppose that's a sort of bigger headspace. It's a bigger world to create. But those are the 2 things that I am trying to pull into being because they don't exist, and I have to try and manifest them.
And just when you say pull into being, it does take an awful lot of tenacity, doesn't it, to keep that whole life going, to have the same enthusiasm and energy that you always had from when you were the 4-year-old going, I should be Mary. What's going on here?
What's going on? Absolutely. Yeah, I find there are some days where I go, fuck it. I don't know how I'm gonna, I don't know where the income is coming from, later on this year. Should I still say this? Should I grow up and get a normal job? And then I go, you're fucking 59. There's no chance of that now. You can't even go in the army. You've aged out. You've just got to stick with it. So no, I do have quite down days where I'm like, is there space for me still to be making work? And then the next day, I kind of think about the things I'm doing, and I have a different take on reality. But I think it can be a little bit up and down, working in the arts, being freelance.
Yeah.
No, I think it can be up and down, working in the arts, like trying to find your grounding. So throughout my life, I've done therapy when I can afford it. Therapy's brilliant, helps with grounding. And I do sit down and take 3 deep breaths quite frequently to stop myself panicking about the future. Doing the improv makes me laugh. Having a conversation with you makes me laugh. So, there are so many difficult things going on in the world, in the greater world as well. Like when we were growing up, it was the nuclear threat. And
now it's the everything.
It's the everything.
Oh my God, it's everything.
So
it's everything.
And you do. So there's part of me going, can I make money from what I'm doing? Should I be doing something else? And there's another part of me going, is it relevant what I'm doing? What's relevant? I go back to myself and go, what can I tell? What am I interested in? I can only work from me. I have to start with me. I have to keep me sort of interested and happy, and then I can make stuff and hope that other people will be interested in that as well.
It was when we were doing stuff in Covent Garden, the 2 girls I worked with, and I met a guy who had a theatre company called Inside Out, and they used to do work inside and outside. And he had a wonderful philosophy of performance, because we were trying to do green issue stuff. This is way back in the 80s. And he went, if you do issues theatre, you're just going to preach to the converted. He was saying, I always think when I get on stage, what I'm trying to do is open people up. It's just the whole thing of people are together and you just open them up. So always just have that thing, that you have some function, just even the whole thing of bringing people together. So one, I always think of that, that's the justification for being a performer. It can seem like, oh, is it a selfish life or whatever? I see that in your work, and I also see that amazing work that you did with kids, the amazing work you've done with the elders there, and just the whole thing of bringing your talent.
To me, it's about empathy.
Yeah.
And I've realised this as I've got older. I want to create empathy. And it might be through people crying, or through people laughing, or through people... I'm not necessarily going to be argumentative. Some of my characters on stage, I think, in this new play might be, but I think it's about creating something that an audience can relate to, can feel included in, and can have empathy with. Because it's one thing that live performance gives us. You have to go somewhere. You have to sit in a room with other people. And I think empathy is something that we may be in need of really holding on to. And if that's my small contribution... And again, I don't care who's in the room. The people in the room are the right people. There might be 10 people in the room. There might be hundreds of people in the room. I've played to very large audiences. I've played to very small audiences. And I think the people in the room are the right people.
Thanks, Michelle Reid.
It's lovely being in the room with you today.
If you'd like to get in touch, you can email me on angledychats@gmail.com. Chats is a Farron Gildee production produced by Paul Farron and Anne Gildee.